Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Brisden. My name is Whitney, and today we are going to be going over some recommendations for Nora November, which is a readathon put on by Storm at Storm Reads, Lee at Dark Roots Creations, and Tina at Tina Simeon, I want to say is how you say the last part. But all of those will, of course, be linked down below. Storm also created a Discord, so I'll try to leave that link down below. But if it doesn't work or anything, go to her video and then you can go to the Discord that way. So there is a bingo board, which I'll put up here, and there's just different prompts. You can take this as seriously as you want. If you read one book from one of these prompts, it's a win. You can definitely double, triple up if you want to. I have several that work for different categories here, and I decided to, in order to keep this short and sweet, I chose 5 books for each category. Again, some of these overlap. You'll see series pop up in multiple categories. And I just picked some of my personal favorites and that I thought would work well. The only one that doesn't have 5 is the JD Robb category, which is a pen name for her, where she writes the In Death series, because I'm Nora Roberts fan. I did try one of the In Death series back when I first got into Nora Roberts when I was in my teens, and I didn't like it. I still have that book though. And so yeah, I have all of those stuff written under Nora Roberts. I'm not into the JD Robb In Death series. So that one I only have 2 books to talk about, but the rest I'll have 5. And of course, this doesn't include everything. Like, there's so much more that she has written, but these are just my personal recommendations based on what I've read and what I've enjoyed from her. So let's go ahead and get into the first category, which is set in Ireland. So I have the 5 books here. And the first one I'm going to mention is called Morrigan's Cross. This is book 1 in the Circle Trilogy. So this would also work for first in series. And I would say this one works for paranormal characters as well, because it does have like vampires and such. So if you want to use that for that, you could certainly do that as well. But basically, in the Circle Trilogy, you have a group of 6, and you have 2 brothers. One's a sorcerer, and one got turned into a vampire. And so there's time travel in this one because the sorcerer ends up coming to present day. There's a witch, there's a scholar who's also a queen of a land, there's a shapeshifter, so you can shapeshift into different animals. And there's also a warrior who is basically a vampire hunter. And these 6 have to come together to defeat Lilith, who is the evil vampire who's trying to destroy multiple worlds, because there's multiple worlds in here. The 2 characters are from another world, and then they come into this one. It does take place in different places. You know, it starts in the US and then goes to Ireland and then goes to this world that the other 2 are part of. So this is a little bit of a darker series, so definitely keep that in mind. There's there's a lot, and one thing in particular is there is something with a child, with the vampires, so just keep that in mind if you're going into the series. I do really enjoy this series. It's very, very atmospheric. Love the characters. Several of her series are kind of set in this format where you have 6 people coming together to battle evil, but this one definitely stands out for me. So I think I reread it last year, I want to say. Maybe it was earlier this year, but absolutely love the series. So if you're okay with a little bit darker, this is one that you could choose for that. And of course, like I said, it would work for other categories as well. This one would also work for multiple categories, and this is Jewels of the Sun, which is the first in the Gallaghers of Ardmore trilogy. So again, first in series it would work for. This one, you have 3 cousins. I think they're cousins. Maybe the 2 are... No, sorry, I'm getting it mixed up. These ones, they're siblings. So there's 3 siblings, and they run a pub in Ireland. And then there's kind of a god adjacent character in this one, and in order for him to break the curse that is put on him and his love, they need to find love. So he's kind of meddling in their lives, which rubs the characters a little bit of the wrong way and such. So this is a fun series. It's not a complete standout, like it's more middle of the road for me. When I'm reaching for other series, but it does take place in Ireland, so the atmosphere and the setting is very, very cool, and you have that pub setting, which is also really enjoyable. And then the dynamic between the siblings and then their love interests plays a role as well. So this is another great choice if you're interested in something maybe a little bit lighter but still has a little bit of a fantastical element. That would be one to pick up. Then this is probably one of my top recommendations. So this is book 1 of the Cousins O'Dwyer trilogy. This is called Dark Witch. Um, Again, taking place in Ireland, which works perfectly. And this one's really cool because you have dual timelines. So there is a timeline with the main characters, the 3 main characters in this book, their ancestors. There's a timeline that deals with that. And basically, back then there was an evil, and the matriarch kind of trapped it for a time, and now these guys are having to come together to take care of it. And there's also animal companions in this one, which is really fun. I really love animal companions. So you have a horse, you have a hawk, and then you have a hound. And so that's really, really cool. And yeah, I love how this one's done. Very, very atmospheric. With the dual timelines and then the animal companions and such. So this would be a top recommendation from me for sure. And again, it fulfills multiple categories. You know, it fulfills set in Ireland. You can do first in series, and probably paranormal characters. I'm not sure how strict they are on that because some of these are more fantastical, like dark, evil, insidious stuff, or like really more fantasy based, but I would consider this one would fit for paranormal. So there's that one. Then we have, I'm gonna drop something on my head. This one is actually a 3-in-1. So this is the Born in trilogy. This book's called Irish Born. So you have Born in Fire, Born in Ice, and Born in Shame. So again, this would work for first in series if you read Born in Fire, and it is set in Ireland, very much so. And so in this one, basically, you have 3 sisters. The first sister was born when her parents' relationship, when they were still very much in love and happy and such. The second sister was born when their relationship has cooled off. They don't have a great relationship. They're kind of on the rocks. And then the third sister is actually a half sister. Their father had an affair. And so she's coming to Ireland to meet her sisters. And this one is more of a straight romance, so it would work for category romance for sure. But the first one's kind of cool because you have, I think it's Maggie. Yeah, Maggie. And she's like a glass blower. So she creates glass art, which is really, really cool. I like that aspect of it. My favorite in this is actually the second one though, and that is with Brianna. And she runs a bed and breakfast, and you have an American writer coming over in the winter, and he's trying to write a story. And I just love those characters. There's a scene from this book that really sticks in my mind. Brianna is very, very shy and reserved and such. I don't really remember the third one as well. Like I said, the second one is my favorite, so that's the one that sticks out in my mind the most. But yeah, this is a great series if you want more just kind of straight romance. So. And then lastly, for this category, we have one of her newer series, which is the Dragonheart Legacy. This is book 1 called The Awakening. Again, first in series would work great. It's more fantastical, but I would say you could make an argument for paranormal characters as well. But basically, in this one, you have our main character, and it starts in the US. And she's kind of really struggling, trying to make ends meet, as she learns that her father has been sending her money all these years since he's left, and her mom has been hiding it from her. So all of a sudden she's rich, and so she goes to Ireland to try to find her father. And in the meantime, she learns of this mythical land that's kind of connected to Ireland. And so she's going back and forth between there and Ireland and then back to the States sometimes as well. This series, I did enjoy it. I read this with my husband, but it's different. Like I said, she's written so many books, they're kind of falling into a rut as far as the plot layout and such. This one was a lot slower on both the action and the romance, which was different, and it focused on the one main couple. There were side couples as well, but it really focused on that main couple in every book. Where generally speaking, her when she does this, it's one couple in the first book, then the second book focuses on the next couple, and the third book focuses on the next couple. For this one, they were the main focus throughout. And so it was a lot slower paced in that sense as far as like romance and then the action as far as fighting the evil that they are fighting as well. So just keep that in mind, especially this first book, because the first part of it is her kind of struggling um, and not knowing what's going on or anything like that. So definitely keep that in mind. But it is fun, and you have like a grandmother element. So I like when there's kind of generational characters. I absolutely love that. So this is a good option to try. But if this is your first Nora Roberts book, and you don't like it, I would still encourage you to pick up something else, because this isn't a very good example of how she typically writes. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. So there is a 5 for set in Ireland. Next, we have movie adaptations, and there's a whole list, which I didn't realize. I haven't really followed that. Like, as big of a Nora Roberts fan as I am, I could care less about the movies. I have seen one, which I'm going to mention. I think it was on Netflix. I was watching it and I was like, this seems awfully familiar. And then I realized it was because it was an adaptation. So, but the rest I haven't really paid attention to. So again, I just pulled my favorites. I will leave the rest of the list down in the description below though. So if what I mentioned you're not interested in, there's more to choose from. I think actually all of these are uh, romantic suspense books. So they would definitely fit for the suspense genre as well. So let's see here. So first up is Montana Sky. This is one I've read multiple times. I was actually supposed to reread it recently and I didn't get to it because it was summer. And it takes place across seasons, but it does have like a very strong winter vibe. And so I didn't read it. But basically in this one you have 3 sisters and their father dies, and they're half sisters. One grew up with their father, the other 2 did not, and they each have a different mom. And basically their father dies and he calls them all, and in order to get their inheritance they have to live together on this ranch in Montana for a year. And so like the one that grew up with her father, like she knows how to run the ranch and such, and so she's kind of upset about this because she's been there, she's been running this ranch. The one's just in it for the inheritance, and the other one is kind of more middle ground, like she's interested in the ranch, but she also kind of respects where the initial daughter's coming from because she's been there this whole time. And then murders start happening and they're trying to figure out what's going on. So this is a fun one. It definitely has kind of that ranchy cowboy vibe. So if you like that, this would be a good one for you. And yeah, the sisters are just trying to figure out what's going on and survive. And then of course there's love in there as well. So that's a good choice, and it's a standalone, so that's always a good choice if you don't want to start a series. Then we have one which is very vibey. It's been a while since I read it, but I remember really, really enjoying it. And this is Midnight Bayou. And this one, I don't remember. It doesn't have a synopsis in it, which is always a little bit frustrating. It just has like little blurbs. But this one, basically, you have the main guy, I believe, and he moves into this house, and weird things start happening. I don't remember if it's like actual murder, but there's definitely kind of a paranormal element in this one, so that would work for paranormal characters as well. Very, very vibey. And then he ends up dating this bartender, and she kind of gets pulled in because she's local, so she knows, kind of the superstitious elements of where they live and such, and kind of the history of where he lives. And so yeah, this is a very vibey one, and like I said, it does work for paranormal characters, and I think that's I would say you could stretch as a color, like midnight blue. So I would say it could work for color and title as well. But yeah, that one is a strong contender. I think all my movie adaptations are. And then we have Brazen Virtue, which is the one that I watched and didn't realize that it was an adaptation. It has, I forget her name, Melissa, or no, not Melissa, Alyssa. No, what is her name? Anyway, Phoebe from Charmed. I'll note it down in the description. But she's the main character on the adaptation. And basically in this one, you have a writer and she writes, like crime books and such. And her sister's really struggling, um, in the middle of a custody battle, struggling to make ends meet. And so her sister's moonlighting as a telephone sex operator. And then one of the operators ends up, I don't remember if it's, I think it's her sister ends up getting murdered. And so anyway, she's coming, and so she decides to kind of try to set a trap for the killer. And I think it's a neighbor, and he's also an investigator at Jackson. He's coming in, and he's part of the investigator team, and he's like warning her, like, you got to be really careful. And so they're just basically setting a trap. So this is a little bit different as far as like the layout of how her suspense novels normally go. And so this would obviously work for suspense and movie adaptations. So definitely kind of a cool one. Um, Darker for sure and whatnot. So then this is one I would also strongly recommend. It's very battered. I've had it for a long time, and that is Northern Lights. In this one, you have a cop, and he ends up, something happens. I don't remember the exact details on it, but something happens, and so basically he ends up going to become chief of this very small town in Alaska, and his romantic interest is, I believe she's the like bush pilot, and it takes place, they're in the middle of winter, so they're all kind of shut down and trapped for the season, and somebody starts killing, and so he's having to deal with that. And she obviously has lived there, so she knows the characters and such, and so they're kind of working together. But I really like the main male lead in this one. um, I really liked his character, and there's definitely scenes from this one that have stood out to me, even though I haven't read it in a while. So this is definitely a good option if you're looking for more, kind of straight suspense romance. It's a great option. And then lastly, we have Angel's Fall, which I have not read in a while, and I don't really remember it all that well. But basically, you have Reese, and she goes hiking into these falls, and as she's looking around through her binoculars, she sees a man and a woman, and the man is attacking the woman. And so she rushes down the trail and runs into Brody, who's kind of a lone wolf type. And she's like, this man's killing this woman. They go back up, and there's nobody there. They call in, the people they need to call in, and they can't find anything. And the town is kind of suspicious of her. She's a newcomer. She's very jumpy, kind of nervous type. And so they don't necessarily believe that she saw what she saw, but Brody does. And so they're trying to figure out what happened. So this is a great one. Like I said, I'll leave the rest linked down below. All these work for the suspense genre as well. So there's that. Then we have our first in series, which this was a hard one because there is so many. She does have several like family series that I could have pulled from. You have the McGregors, you have the Stanilaskis, which is like a Ukrainian family, and then you also have the O'Hurleys, which are like a family they grew up entertaining, and so you have that family as well. I decided not to go with any of those. Her family series, while enjoyable, they're more straight romance, so they definitely work for like the category romance prompt. But they're just, you have these big families, and I don't know, I just don't prefer those over other stuff. Still very enjoyable, very easy to read. So if you're looking kind of more straight romance with the family element, they would be a good option. The McGregors is kind of funny because you have like the patriarch of the family, and he's meddling in his children's life to make sure they get married because he wants, grandchildren and stuff, and then he meddles in the grandchildren's life to make sure that they get married too. So that one is a little bit fun. The Stanislavskis, they have like a ballet element, and then the O'Hurleys, like I said, they were performers as kids, and then they kind of split their separate ways as adults. And so that one's a fun series as well. They're just not ones I'm always reaching for when I'm looking. So first up is a more unique one, and that is Time and Again. This actually has Time Was and Times Change, which is, it's a duology, and it's time travel. So in the first one, you have Caleb, and he is stuck in the past, and he's trying to figure out how to get back to the 23rd century, and he falls in love with Liberty, and then Jacob, his brother, ends up coming back to try to get him, and like, figure out what happened to his brother, and then he ends up falling in love as well. So with that time travel element, it's definitely a little bit unique. It's different from some of her other books, which is why I like it. So this is a good option. Time Was is obviously the first one in that series. So there's that. Then this one I reread last year, and this is the Three Sisters Island trilogy. The first one is Dance Upon the Air. This is really very vibey. I like the relationship between the women in this book. And so basically, you have these three women, and they're descended from the three sisters that were originally cursed upon this island. And so they're having to come together to break the curse, and each of them have to kind of accept something in order to break their curse. And so in this one, you have Nell. Nell, I'm horrible with names, but Nell is the main character of the first one, and she's on the run from her ex. She like fakes her own death, and she's on the run, and she's in hiding. And so her whole thing is she has to accept, that she's stronger than she thinks she is, and she falls in love with one of the other characters, of the group, her brother she falls in love with, and he's sheriff, so he's like, you have to trust me as sheriff, and then she's also having to trust in her own strength and her own power. And then you have Ripley, who's Nell's love interest's sister, and she needs to accept her magic, and that's the second book. And then you have um, the third one, Mia, and she has to kind of forgive. Her first love, ended in a very hurtful way, and so she's having to kind of learn how to forgive, um, and let go of that hurt, essentially. But I do like it has the element aspects, so you have air, earth, and fire, and water comes into play as well. And yeah, this is fun. This would also work for Shoreline on the cover, and it's just very vibey. This one in particular, they again span seasons, but this one, the ending is like perfect for Halloween autumn vibes. Like, there's a bookshop cafe in here, which is so much fun. I just love everything about this series, and like I said, I did reread it recently. I've read it multiple times, so that's a great option if you're interested. Then we have the In Boonsboro trilogy. This one also has a paranormal aspect, so it will work for paranormal characters. And this one, basically, you have, I think, three brothers and their mother, and they bought this old inn, and they're restoring it and want to open it up as a bed and breakfast. But it's haunted, so they're having to deal with that. I'm pretty sure in this first one, his love interest, the one brother, his love interest has three boys of her own, so that's kind of a fun dynamic. You have that single mother aspect, and she's like, I got my hands full, I don't need anything else. But this is a really, really cool series, and I like that they have their mother involved as well. So this is a great option to start a series as well. Then we have one of my favorite, and if you're looking for just straight romance, this will work for category romance as well. And this is the Bride Quartet. So there's four of these, and you have four friends, and they run a wedding planning business. And so the first one, this is Vision. in white. She's the photographer of the group, and so she takes care of the pictures and everything. And then you have the second one, I think she does like flowers and like the decorations and such for the weddings. And then you have the baker and like little treats and such. And so she does the cake and like the little treats. And then you have the fourth one, and she kind of does the bottom line. So she brings everything together, and she's the one dealing mostly with the customers and whatnot. Straight romance, but the friendship in this is so strong. And then you also have their love interest, which is really enjoyable. I particularly like the love interest in this one because he's a little bit more like academic, and I just like those type of characters in books. Which in the Three Sisters Island trilogy, there's also like an academic type character, and I just always really like like that's my kind of man right there. So I always fall in love with those characters. But yeah, this series I've read many times. I'm actually due to reread it again. I've been wanting to. So this is a great option to start a series, especially if you're looking for more of that just romance aspect and a great friend group. So there's that. And then lastly is also one of her newer series. This is the one that was before the Dragonheart Legacy. Because basically in the spring, she always releases a standalone. And then in the autumn, she releases a book that's part of a series. Normally they're trilogies. And so that takes like 3 years to complete the trilogy. And then she does a standalone in the spring. So this one is the Chronicles of the One. This is book one. And this is obviously called Year One. And this one is very different from like her other ones. And I really enjoyed this one. Again, you're more following just the one couple, which is cool. Well, sort of, because this first one you're actually following her parents. So basically, something happens and it releases this evil, and so a sickness takes the world, and so it's very dystopian in that sense. And then Lana is the main character in this one, and this year one is like, you know, things falling apart. And when the sickness comes, a bunch of people realize they're magical. So you have fairies and, you know, shapeshifters and such. And then elves, they didn't realize they had that magical ancestry, and so that comes out in them. And then you have the dark who's trying to destroy these magical creatures. You also have like just the human faction of the raiders and like religious zealots and such. And so this is a very dark series, but I really enjoyed this one. And so in this first one, it's the one who is the one that's gonna, you know, take care of the darkness. It's her parents and kind of the dystopian aspect and the aftermath of trying to figure stuff out. And then in book two, she's training to be able to fight the darkness. And then in book three is the actual battle. So again, you're not having, even though you have a lot of characters coming together, it's not formatted how most of her stuff is, most of her fantasy trilogies and such, where you're focusing on a different couple each time. It sort of is because it's focusing on different time frames, but really cool if you can handle the dark aspect of this. Like, absolutely love this. The first in the trilogy is actually my favorite, which, you know, normally I like it because as it goes on, you're getting, you know, kind of wrapped up and such, and it gets more stuff happening. But I really like this first one. So if you're looking for something a little bit more dystopian, a little darker, that is one to pick up. So there's that one. Then we have category romance here. Let me just put that up there. So the first one is one of two historical romances. She doesn't really do historical romances. And this one is actually a companion to a duology. But in that duology, her character is an author and she's writing a book throughout, and that's more strictly romance. And this is a book that character was writing, and so it's historical. It's one of my favorites. You basically have Jake Redman, who is half Apache and all man, and he's in the Arizona territory, and then Sarah Conaway is an Eastern lady, but he's ending up having to kind of play guardian angel to her because the West is a little bit wild and she needs protecting. So I really enjoy this one. The other, you know, two, but this one is a lot of fun. So that one is great for just category romance, especially if you're looking for something a little more historical. Then I pulled this one, and this is a companion to the Stanislavskis, that family series. This is a companion, so it has some characters from them that weren't like main characters to the family. And this has Reflections and Dance of Dreams. And so you basically have a ballet aspect again. So in Reflections, a lifetime pursuing her dreams had left Lindsay Dunn little time for romance, but seductive Seth Bannon is about to give the inexperienced beauty a crash course in the art of love. And then innocent Ruth Bannon is in awe of her demanding mercurial mentor, Nikolai Davidov. But when their partnership erupts into passionate desire, it's up to Ruth to teach the guarded um, Nikolai the tender dance of love. So I read this one multiple times, and like I said, you don't need to read the Stanislavskis to read this one, and it's just a good, straightforward romance. I like that ballet element. With the second one, Dance of Dreams, there is kind of a little bit of the age gap element as well. So if that's something you're interested in, there it is. So yeah, that's a good one. This one is the first one. This is has three in it. It's mysterious. It has This Magic Moment, Search for Love, and The Right Path. This magic moment actually works for the movie adaptation. And so I wanted to include this one because that was another one that I would have included in the movie adaptation if I wasn't trying to keep the stacks kind of shorter. Because it really stands out. And in that one, you basically have Ryan and Pierce, and Ryan works for like a production company type thing, and they're putting on a TV special for this magician Pierce, and kind of think of death defying magic stunts and such. And so you have that, they're working together trying to set everything up, and there's conflict because as they fall in love, she's really worried about this act he's going to do because it's very dangerous. And she's really, really worried about that. And I really like the dynamic between these two characters because he is kind of what he is. And so, yeah, that's a good one. And the other two, um, Search for Love, I didn't really like, honestly, because there's kind of like this cousin aspect, which I don't like. Even though they're not like close cousins or anything, like I hate when romance uses that. Like, mm-mm. And then The Right Path is kind of more of a romantic suspense. When the knife-wielding mystery man she encountered on the beach one night turned out to be wealthy Nicholas Gregoris, how could spirited Morgan James' very natural suspicions withstand the consuming desire ignited by his kiss? So, all three great if you're looking for just straight romance. But the first one is the one I would recommend, which is This Magic Moment, and it does cover the adaptation prompt as well. So this one I had to go with because this is the very first book Nora Roberts wrote, which is Irish Thoroughbred, and then this one, it's Irish Hearts, also contains Irish Rose. Sorry, there's a third one called Irish Rebel. So Irish Thoroughbred was her first book, and it's not set in Ireland, it's set in the States, but the main characters are coming from Ireland. So there's a very big Irish influence here. It's horse farm, and so love that, and just a really enjoyable, even though it's her first novel, I think this definitely stands up um, very, very well. And so basically, first you have Adelia, and she comes to work with her uncle, who is a horse trainer at Royal Meadows and one of the most renowned stables in the world. But there was a catch, and his name was Travis Grant. He was the stable's owner and a man as proud, as passionate, as opinionated as herself. And then Irish Rose, her cousin, is coming over and falls in love with like the next door ranch guy. And so yeah, this is a fun one. And then the Irish Rebel, it's their daughter, um, Travis and Adelia's daughter, that it's focusing on. So this is a really, really great option, especially if you like the horses. So there's that. And then lastly is another, and that would work for first in series as well. And I think you can make it stretch, even though it's not set in Ireland, it's very Irish based. So I think you could stretch that too. And then I had to include this one. This is Lovers and Dreamers. So this is another 3-in-1. And you have Daring to Dream, Holding the Dream, and Finding the Dream. And again, more just straight romance. And basically, the three women in this series, you have Margot, who is the daughter of the housekeeper. You have Laura, who is the daughter of the Templetons, which is basically like the Hiltons. They, have hotels and such. And then you have Kate, who was taken in by the Templetons. There's a family connection there, and when her parents die, she's taken in and raised by the Templetons. With Margot, she's kind of, her mom's very Irish and is like, even though they treat you like family, you need to stay in your place. Like, no, like, you're not family, you are the help, so stay in your place. And then she falls in love with Laura's brother, so, the heir to the Templeton Empire. And then I really like Laura's story. Kate, I don't remember as well. There's kind of conflict because her father was accused of embezzling, and now something's happening. She's an accountant or something like that, and something's happening with her own accounts, and she's worried, because of what her father was accused of, and then she's worried she made a mistake and whatever. I don't really remember her love interest at all, but Laura, she's, gets out of a bad marriage and she's trying to kind of start fresh without like the Templeton help. And her brother's friend from high school ends up coming back, and he's just kind of that bad boy with a heart of gold, and I just love him and I love Laura. And so this is another one that's one of my favorites that I've read a lot. So this is a great option for category romance. So there is that. Then we have color in the title. And so I two of these are part of the same series, but then the third one also has a color in the title, but I put it in a different category. But the whole series is great. But first up, we have one of the romantic suspense, and this is Black Hills. And this one, I believe there's like a nature reserve or something like, oh, refugees, wildlife refugees. So Cooper Sullivan spent his summers of his youth on his grandparents' South Dakota ranch, sharing innocent game and stolen kisses with the neighbor girl Lil Chance. Now, 12 years after they last walked together hand in hand, fate has brought them back to Black Hills. Coop has left his fast-paced life as an investigator in New York to take care of his aging grandparents and the ranch he has come to call home. Though the memory of his touch still haunts her, Lil has let nothing stop her dream of opening the Chance Wildlife Refugee. But something or someone has been keeping a close watch when small pranks and acts of destruction escalate into the heartless killing of Lil's beloved cougar. Memories of an unsolved murder in these very hills have Coop springing into action to keep Lil safe. So, very much a romantic suspense, but I like that wildlife refuge aspect to it. So that's a great one for color, Black Hills. So there's that one. Then we have the In the Garden trilogy. So the first one is Blue Dahlia, and then you have Black Rose, and the last one's called Red Lily. So this whole trilogy would work. Obviously, Blue Dahlia would work for first in series as well. This is a really cool series. It's got a lot going on, so it's more, kind of straight romance, but there's also a paranormal character. There is a ghost in this one, which I'll talk more when I get to that category. And this one has a generational aspect. So the character in Black Rose, she's actually older, and then her love interest is again an academic type. He's coming in to help research who this potential ghost may be. So I really like that one. Blue Dahlia, you have a woman like in her 30s, I want to say, and then in Red Lily, she's in her 20s. So you have this friendship, but most of the generational ones are like family connections, where these are three women in different times in their life, but there's that friendship. It also has that garden aspect, because they run a garden center, and so it has that, and then like the history of the house and who this ghost is and everything like that. So this one, Blue Dahlia will work first in series. You have paranormal characters, and it's, color and title. So this is a great series. If you're looking for something, one series that would fit multiple prompts, this would be a trilogy to pick up for sure. So I really, really recommend that trilogy. Then this is the very first book of Nora Roberts I've ever read, and this is actually the fourth in a series. But like I said, I read it first. I think it works just fine to read this one if you haven't read the rest of the series. The other three definitely need to go in order. But this is Chesapeake Blue, and like I said, this I found it. I've mentioned this before, but there was like a library unit that used to come, but they would give free books, and I picked this one up, and it was my very first Nora Roberts, and I absolutely fell in love. I actually have the hardback here, but it's fallen apart, so I ended up getting a paperback so I could reread the series and not have to deal with the falling apart book. But yeah, this is a fun one. You have four brothers. The first three are all older, and they've kind of gone about their lives, and that the first one would work for first in series. I have it slotted for a different category, but basically they all kind of go their separate ways, and then they get called home because their father was in an accident and he ends up passing, but he had taken on, they're all adopted, so they're all troubled, teens, young teens, and they ended up getting fostered and adopted by Ray and Stella Quinn. And then Stella, passes on, years before, and then Ray, is ends up taking in this boy, but there's kind of a secret about this boy's connection to Ray and why he took him in, and there's kind of suspicion. And so these three brothers are having to come together to raise the boy. And then in the Chesapeake Blue, it's Seth. Seth's the boy. And so now he's an adult, and he's been kind of running around because of the secret, and he ends up going back home. There is a slight paranormal aspect to this, which is really, really cool. I like how that one's done. And so that could work for that. You do have paranormal characters. And yeah, just a fantastic series. Like, more straight romance, so you could definitely do it for category romance. But this one works for color and title, first in series if you do the first book in the series, and it also works for another category which I will get into. But this is one of my all-time favorites, and I don't know how much is nostalgia and how much is just I really enjoy the characters, and I really enjoy, there's a little bit of, suspense aspect to it as well. So recommend the Chesapeake Bay Saga for sure. And then lastly, which is another movie adaptation that you can do, and it's Blue Smoke. And so this one, you have Rena, I want to say. Yeah, and so her family has a pizzeria, and it's targeted by an arsonist. And that kind of sets Rena on the path to want to become an arson investigator, which she does. And when she does, she starts getting these threatening calls and these crimes that are like set just for her. So she's having to try to figure that out with her love interest, like what's going on, like who's targeting me, what's happening here. So this is a great option as well. And like I said, it would work for movie adaptation too. So there is that. And so there's that. Let me actually put it down here. Running out of room here. All right, and then next we have Shoreline on the cover. And so first up we have Carolina Moon, which is also another movie adaptation. So it works for that. And this one, so have Tori Bodine grew up in South Carolina in the small rundown house where her father ruled with an iron fist and a leather belt, and where her dreams and talents had no room to flourish. But she had Hope, who lived in the big house just a short skip away, and whose friendship allowed Tori to be something she wasn't allowed to be at home, a child. After young Hope's brutal murder, unsolved to this day, Tori's life began to fall apart, and now as she returns to her hometown with plans to settle in and open a stylish home design shop, she's determined to find a measure of peace and free herself from haunting visions of the past. As she forges a new bond with Cade Lavelle, Hope's older brother and the heir to the family fortune, she isn't sure whether the tragic loss they share will unite them or drive them apart. But she is willing to open her heart just a little and try. Living so close to those unhappy memories will be more difficult and frightening than Tori could ever have expected, however, because Hope's murder is nearby as well. So, great one. Like I said, it does work for a movie adaptation, and it, has a shoreline on the cover. So there's that one. Then we have the next one in the Three Sisters Island trilogy. All of these would work, but again, you can see the shoreline. And so this is Ripley's story, and she's the one that really has to, she's kind of shunned her magic. She wants nothing to do with it. And so she's having to figure out, and there's an academic type in this one, and he's coming to research kind of the history of the Three Island, and he's kind of more of like a paranormal investigator type. And so he's trying to, research, like study them as well, which rubs Ripley the wrong way, especially with their romantic interest in each other. I really like Ripley. She's very prickly, but I do really like her character as well. So that's a great one, especially if you read Dance Upon the Air for first in series, then you can move on to that one. Then we have the first in the Chesapeake Bay saga, which is Sea Swept. And this one, I think it's Cameron? Yeah, which Ethan is the second book, and he's my favorite. I do like Cameron. Philip is not my favorite male specimen, but I love the writing, and I love, the relationship that he builds with his love interest. So anyway, this is the first one. I've already told you what it's about. Again, highly recommend, but this one, I mean, it's more on the water, but you can kind of see the shoreline back there as well. So then we have Whiskey Beach, which I don't remember this one. I'm sure I read it, but I don't really remember it. But you have like the lighthouse and the shoreline back there. And so this one, you have, for more than 300 years, Bluff House has sat above Whiskey Beach, guarding its shore and its secret. To summer tourists, it's the crown jewel of the town's stunning scenery. To the residents of Whiskey Beach, it's landmark and legend. To Eli Landon, it's his home. A Boston lawyer, Eli has weathered an intense year of public scrutiny and police investigation after being accused of murdering his soon-to-be ex-wife. And though there was never enough evidence to have him arrested, his reputation is in tatters as well as his soul. He needs sanctuary. He needs Bluff House. While Eli's beloved grandmother is in Boston recuperating from a nasty fall, Abra Walsh has cared for Bluff House, among her other jobs as a yoga instructor, jewelry maker, and massage therapist. She is a woman with an open heart and a wide embrace, and no one is safe from her special, some would say overbearing brand of nurturing, including Eli. He begins to count on Abra for more than her cooking, cleaning, and massage skills, and starts to feel less like a victim and more like the kind of man who could finally solve the murder of his wife and clear his name. But Bluff House's many mysteries are a siren song to someone intent on destroying Eli and reaping the rewards. So, again, works for the suspense genre. Great option for the shoreline on cover and to fit with the suspense genre as well. And lastly is one of her newer standalones. This one was from last year. And this is Night Work. And yeah, you can see it has the shoreline. And this one is unique. It's again romantic suspense, but it's very unique as far as the characters go. So the main character, he's a thief, and he becomes a thief because his mother has cancer and is struggling to make ends meet and pays bills. She's a single mom, and so he starts stealing to help support the family while his mom's struggling with cancer. And then he just keeps going, and he ends up falling in with a wrong guy who hires him for a job. But basically, this guy is very powerful and decides that the main character's his now. He owns him. And so he travels around and he ends up falling in love, but he realizes he can't do anything about that. And then they end up coming together later on. And yeah, I really like his character. It's very morally gray. And so there's that. And again, it works for the suspense genre as well. So you can definitely fulfill multiple prompts with this one. There's that one. And then let's see here. Next we have JD Robb. So there's only two, like I said. So her JD Robb series is the In Death series. I'm not sure where this one falls in that series, but it's called Purity in Death. Basically, you have the main character of this series. Let's see. So Eve. And so in this one, you have Louis Cogburn has spent 3 days holed up in his apartment staring at his computer screen. His pounding headache was unbearable. It felt like spikes drilling into his brain, and it was getting worse. Finally, when someone knocked at his door, Louis picked up a baseball bat, opened the door, and started swinging. The first cop on the scene fired his stunner twice. Louis died instantly. Detective Eve Dallas has taken over the investigation, but there's nothing to explain the man's sudden rage or death. The only clue is a bizarre message left on his computer screen. So basically, the whole series is following this Detective Eve Dallas. So there's that one. And then the other one that would work is Remember When, which is kind of two parts. The first one she's writing as Nora Roberts, and then the second one she's writing as JD Robb, and Eve obviously plays a part in that. If I think for this prompt, this is the book I'm actually going to go with. I do want to give the In Death series another try at some point, just to see, but I think this would be a good way to kind of ease myself into that since it's kind of a combination. And so in this one, you have in part one, Nora Roberts introduces us to Lane Tavish, known to the folks in Angels Gap, Maryland, as the proprietor of Remember When, an antique treasure and gift shop. They have no idea that she used to be Elaine O'Hara, daughter of the notorious conman Big Jack O'Hara, or that she grew up moving from place to place, one step ahead of the law. Elaine's past has just caught up with her. Her long-lost uncle has visited her shop, leaving a cryptic warning before dying in the street, run down by a car. Soon afterward, Lane's home is ransacked. Now it's up to her and an enigmatic stranger named Max Gannon to find out who's chasing her and why. The answers lie hidden in a fortune that will change Lane's life. Part 2, Daisy Robb takes us to New York City in 2059 and puts Detective Lieutenant Eve Dallas on the case. The treasure that Lane and Max sought has never been fully recovered, and now someone else is pursuing the missing gems. Someone who's willing to kill for them. Sharp-witted and sexy, Eve has used traveling in the shadowy corners outside the law. In a future where crime meets cutting-edge technology, she will attempt to track down the diamonds once and for all and stop the danger and death that have surrounded them for decades. So, I never read this one. This is one I was missing and I picked up when I completed my collection. So this is probably the one I'm going to start with just to kind of ease my way into the JD Robb, and then at some point I'll probably try to read this one, and if I enjoy it I might try to get more into the In Death series, but we'll see how it goes. So this is a great one, like I said, if you're also trying to kind of ease into the JD Robb side of things. So there's that one. I'm just gonna put it back here because the table's getting full. And then next we have paranormal characters. And so I try to stay away from her more like fantastical ones, and do more like the ghostly aspect. This one is kind of in the middle here. And so this is book one of the Sign of Seven trilogy, and this is called Blood Brothers. This one, I don't reread this one a whole lot. It is very dark. It just creeps me out. There's one scene in here that I just can't. And so basically you have three friends and they're growing up in this town, and they go out into the woods one night and become blood brothers. And when they do that, their blood falls onto this ancient altar and releases this evil. And every 7 years, this evil comes to this town and just wreaks havoc. And, they're doing their best to try to figure out how to stop it and whatnot. And one is kind of like the golden boy of the town. One is from the wrong side of the tracks, was very abused by his father, and the other guy's kind of more middle of the road, essentially. But yeah, there's one scene in this, so you're having these women come in now, and are what is gonna help them finally defeat this evil. But there's one scene where she's trapped in like the gym, I think, and it's dark, and that scene just stuck with me and it freaks me out. So if you're looking for something dark, this is it, for sure. So definitely a unique one as far as, I mean, definitely set out plot wise like a lot of her other ones, but it's the atmosphere and such for me that just, no thank you, no thank you. And then next we have the second one. This is Ethan's story, so this is Rising Tides, and this is obviously book 2 in the Chesapeake Bay saga. This one, like I mentioned, you do have a paranormal aspect, so you actually have Ray coming in, and it's more like kind of magical realism paranormal, but Ray's dead and he's coming and talking to his boys, and he does it in different ways. Like I think Ethan, he does it like more in dream form, which is really cool, and then Stella plays a part in the last one, so that definitely fits the paranormal aspect. And like I said, this whole series, like you can see I included 3 of the 4 books, and that's for a reason because I absolutely love this series. So, and it fits multiple prompts, shoreline on cover, category romance, a little bit of suspense in there. Like, it's just great. And the first one's first in series. Like, can't go wrong with this series at all. So there's that one. And then we have the third one in the Garden Trilogy. So this is Red Lily. So again, color and title. And so this one you have, I think she's called the Harper Bride. And so she's been a ghost in the house for as long as any of them can remember. Nobody knows who she is, though, and what her connection to the family home is. But basically, she's always been kind of harmless. She sings to the children. She really likes the children, and so she goes in and sings them lullabies. Well, Haley, she had a baby in the first one. Like, she shows up. She's the one that's like 20 something, and she shows up, young, pregnant, needing help. She has distant ties to, I forget her name, the older lady in here. But anyway, she has distant ties, so she comes and she starts working in the garden, and gets help, and she's living there. And so she has her baby, and the bride starts turning violent. And so that's part of why in the second one they're having the academic type come in and help research the genealogy and try to figure out who this woman is and what her ties to the family are. And so, yeah, you have that paranormal aspect, which is fantastic. Really, again, another series you can't go wrong with. So, there's that one. Then we have the next one in the Boonsboro trilogy. So, this is 2, Last Boyfriend. And again, you have this inn that they're trying to restore and such, and there is a supernatural element to it. There's a haunting there, and so they're trying to figure what's going on so they can open their inn, essentially. So a great one for that prompt as well. And lastly, this one, so we have the Calhouns, and this one there's 5. So there's Catherine, Amanda, and Lila in this one, and then the other 2 are in the other one. I think one's actually like a sister-in-law to them, but there is kind of a mystery. And again, you have an academic type with one of the sisters, which is fantastic. But I think they have like an inn as well. So yeah, Catherine C.C. Calhoun was not going to let anyone take away the towers, especially not some handsome hotel magnate Trenton St. James. As far as Trent was concerned, his dealings with C.C. were strictly business, but her mix of fire and fury unexpectedly led to his mind in a completely different direction. So this would work well for category romance. You have first in series that would work. And I think, let's see here, then you have the architect who falls in love with the next sister. And then the third is for the love of Lila. And adrift in a storm, Professor Max Quartermain thought he must have hallucinated the beautiful mermaid who came to his rescue. But Lila was no mystical creature. She was a woman of flesh and blood and undeniably attracted to the intense, mysterious stranger. And so overtly, you wouldn't think this has that paranormal aspect, but it does. There's kind of a mystery. And I think it's not very, like, in your face paranormal, but like something's kind of leading them to find, like, I think like a treasure or something that's in the towers. It's been a while since I read these ones, so forgive me on that, but there is a slight paranormal aspect to this one, so I think it works. There's that. And now we're to our last category, which, like, so this is barely scratching the surface. So these are just my top 5 because a lot of her books are in the suspense genre. So, but first we have The Villa, and this is again a generational. So you have grandma, I think mom, and then granddaughter, which I always love that aspect. And they have like a winery type thing. So, and then something starts happening. Again, there's no synopsis here. I don't know why they don't put the synopsis. So anyway, but yeah, they have like a winery and stuff starts happening. And so you have that suspense aspect, but I love the generational aspect. And it's been a while since I've read this one. And so yeah, they're trying to figure out what's going on. I think the grandma maybe makes like an announcement, and that kind of sets things off. So that's an option, and I do, like I said, I don't remember it fully, but it is a good option. Then we have my favorite Nora Roberts book, and you can tell because it's a bit rough. It's falling apart. There goes that piece. So this is called Three Fates, and this is like a trilogy all put into one. So basically, this has a historical element to it because there was the ship and the Lustiana, and it went down. So yeah, when the Lustiana sank, one survivor became a changed man, giving up his life as a petty thief, but keeping the small silver statue he lifted, a family heirloom to future generations. Now, nearly a century later, that priceless heirloom, one of a long separated set of three, has been stolen, and Malachi Gideon and Rebecca Sullivan are determined to recover their great great grandfather's treasure, reunite three fates, and make their fortune. The quest will take them from their home in Ireland, so this one will work for set in Ireland as well. But it's not fully set because they travel all around. So take them from their home in Ireland to Helsinki, Prague, and New York, where they will meet a brilliant scholar who will aid them in their hunt, and an ambitious woman who will stop at nothing to acquire the fates. So you kind of have this antique aspect, this historical aspect. It's definitely fits for the suspense genre, and like I said, you have the three siblings, and instead of separating it into a trilogy, it's all put together in one. And I just my favorite. Like I've read it so many times. The dogs have gotten a hold of it, obviously, and destroyed it a little bit. I need to get a new copy, but love the Three Fates. Like my favorite by far. So I cannot not recommend that one. Then we have True Betrayals. On this one, again, you have like the horse farm aspect, but Kelsey always thought her mom was dead, and it turns out her mom's been in prison basically her whole life, and now she's out and wanting to reconnect. So she goes to this horse farm, but she doesn't know whether to trust her mom or not. And I think stuff starts happening. Um, so now at Naomi's Virginia horse farm, Kelsey is trying to sort out a lifetime of deception and her feelings about her mother. Bonds of love can be fragile, as Kelsey learned from her recently ended marriage. But as the two women rebuild their relationship and Kelsey finds herself swept into an unsettling new romance, she must decide once and for all who she can trust and who threatens to betray her. So this one's fun if you like horses. Great one to choose. This is another one I've enjoyed multiple times. So there's that. Then we have The Witness. And I chose this one because this is, again, a lot of her romantic suspenses have really started to be very similar to each other, but I really like this one. So basically, this one, um, her friend meet these guys, and she ends up witnessing a crime, and like I think there's ties to the Russian mafia and such, and so she ends up going into witness protection essentially, and she's just trying to live her life. So daughter of a cold, controlling mother and an anonymous donor, studious, obedient Elizabeth finally let loose one night, drinking too much at a nightclub and allowing a strange man's seductive Russian accent to lure her to a house on Lakeshore Drive. The events that followed changed her life forever. 12 years later, the woman, now known as Abigail, lives alone on the outskirts of a small town in the Ozarks. A freelance programmer, she works at home designing a sophisticated security system. Her own security is supplemented by a fierce dog, love the dog aspect, and an assortment of firearms. She keeps to herself, saying little and revealing nothing. Unfortunately, that seems to be the quickest way to get attention in a tiny southern town. The mystery of Abigail intrigues local police chief Brooke on both a personal and professional level. Her sharp logical mind, her secretive nature, and her unromantic viewpoints leave him fascinated but frustrated. He suspects that Abigail needs protection from something, even if he doesn't know what, and that her elaborate defenses hide a story that must be revealed. Accustomed to two-bit troublemakers, Gleason is about to walk into the sights of very powerful and dangerous men, and Abigail, who has built a life based on security and self-control, is at a risk of losing both. So, I really like the dog aspect in this one. Animals, and it's just I like the way this one's set out. So this is a really great one. And the last one is just it's very different from her other ones, and that's why I chose it. And this is called Come Sundown. And again, you kind of have this family. So the Bodine Ranch, so a ranch aspect as well. and resort in western Montana is a family business, an idyllic spot for vacationers who want to ride horses in the apple crisp air or couples holding weddings under the wide open sky. A little more than 30,000 acres is home to 4 generations. So, again, a generational aspect, which I always love. And behind the scenes, Bodine Longbow does all she can to keep things running with the help of her siblings, the staff, and new hire Callan Skinner. But not far away, an aunt Bodine has never met lives in her own twisted version of Fae family, one no one knows about, one she never chose. Years ago, Alice was a rebellious 18-year-old who ran off looking for freedom and adventure. Now she cowers in fear, rarely seeing the sunlight, her mind shattered by a man who views her and her offspring as his rightful property. The Longbows don't talk about Alice anymore. Many quietly presume that she's long dead. Then a young bartender leaves the resort late one night, and Bo and Callan discover her discover her battered body in the snow. Is the first sign that danger lurks in the mountains that surround them, and it will not be the only murder to unnerve this peaceful town. But the greatest shock is yet to come when Alice returns, and the threat that follows in her wake will test the bonds that hold Bodine to this place and these people, and thrust her into darkness she could never have imagined. So the whole aspect, and that part of it, like, really kind of changes the dynamic of this one and makes it a little bit different from her other romantic suspense, which is why I chose this one. So that is my top 5, other than the JD Robb books, for each category. Like, really, there's so many other great options. You have the McCade brothers, which is a great option. You have the Garden Trilogy, which was another one that would work for several of these. And so really, like, there's so many others, so many romantic suspense books that you could choose. It's just there's a lot that you can choose from, but these are just the ones that I have really enjoyed in the past. Like, you can see some of the series, like, I'm really pushing because I included them in multiple categories and such. So yeah, if you have any questions about any of these books, or maybe you're looking for something else, like, there's a bunch of, like, ones that would work well for, like, the winter season. So if that's something you're interested in, I have a lot of her bind-ups, which have multiple stories in them, which are more just category romance stories. So that's always an option. But yeah, there's a lot, and I try to keep this short, even though it didn't really work because we're over in an hour now. So if you stuck with me, thank you so much. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you're interested in any of these books in particular. I would love to know which one in caught your eye. And yeah, I'll go ahead and leave you guys here. I hope you will participate in November. Go check out the host channels, and I will see you next time. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.